record this, and we should be seeing record. Okay, cool. And then we'll get this squared away for live, going live straight to OCA YouTube in the next time. So, yeah. So maybe do we want to start with intros and why we're gathered? What do you think, Roseanne?
Sure. Just posting it. I just basically I work for IBM. I am in the biz dev area for security, and looking to kind of help developers basically, you know, learn about all the different resources that are out there for OCA, and to try to help them, you know, work on our projects.
I'll go next. So my name is Jory Burson, and I am Oasis's, which is fun to say plural, Oasis Open Projects Program Manager. And I'm here to help all of our project communities build programs and systems and developer support so that we can foster great, healthy contribution communities around our open projects.
All right, this is Russ. I'll go next. Russ Warren here. I work at IBM in business development. I work along with Rose, and we do technology alliances. And then I also volunteered to be the program manager at OCA. So I'm the guy that's driving activities and tracking things and getting people involved. And if you need to understand how you can get started, let us know, and we'll help you get going.
I guess I can go next. My name's Danny Elliott. I work for IBM, part of a team that helps partners build connectors for IBM's Cloud Pak for Security product, and am a maintainer on the OCA Stick Shifter project, which Cloud Pak relies on.
Hello, my name is Oleg Zharkov. I independent developers. I am doing some integration with Stick Shifter and OpenDXL for my own projects.
Yay.
I was gonna say, it's super lovely to meet you. I think we would love to hear what your project is, if you were comfortable sharing.
My project, Alerflex, it's monitoring system for that can manage security sensors.
Oh, you know what, Oleg? We missed a couple people. Let's do have Professor Andrew Wolf and Chris do their intros, and then we'll jump back to you. Sorry about that, Oleg.
I can go real quick. This is Chris Murphy. I work for a company called TrueStar. We're pretty new to the Oasis in the OCA. I'm mainly here just to kind of start getting my feet wet. We have some upcoming Cloud Pak integrations, and I'm interested in figuring out how we could leverage Stick Shifter for the work that we're, you know, for that work and work that we're planning to do in the future. Danny, it sounds like you might be a good guy to know to talk about that. So nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Yep. That's us.
All right, good morning. Yeah, so I'm
Right. Last but not least.
okay. Yeah, so yeah, I'm Andrew Wolf, and I teach computer science at Loyola University, New Orleans. I just began a cybersecurity degree program here, and I'm looking to get my students involved in some cybersecurity projects. I saw Oasis a couple of months ago, and I thought this sounds like it could be pretty interesting. Or rather, the Open Cybersecurity Alliance. So, you know, so I'm kind of looking for projects that I might be able to get some of my students into, and maybe participate in myself. I spent 30 plus years developing enterprise software and database applications for various people while doing things in cybersecurity along the way. So that's me. I'll just leave it at that.
It's really lovely to meet you, Professor Wolf. I think actually there's probably, I know the IBM team has quite a few different partnerships and things from time to time with universities. I feel like there's got to be cool stuff, to talk about with your students. I think we got Roseanne back. Are you back, dear? So we're just noting that there may be some issues with her connection today because of the power and being out in Texas. So I want to maybe jump back to the Alert Flex and Oleg, you were kind of describing your project a bit halfway through our intros, and so jumping back to that, I think it'd be great to hear more what you're working on and some of your challenges.
You know, I already did some presentation for Alerflex project. Previously, I sent this information, but I think it's partly open source project. I have it's already integrates Alerflex with stick shifter. And at this moment, I'm working on integration with OpenDXL, and also I'm trying to make integration open source security sensors like maybe Suricata, Wazoo, Felco with OpenDXL, and try to make communication between sensors and OpenDXL via OpenSID2 protocol. I partly already did this integration. Probably later, maybe I prepare some presentation, maybe some documentation how it's work, and I will publish this. Hello?
I'm just giving more room between gaps because of the delays for some people. I was just being quiet for just a second. That sounds great. I think that we would love to have a presentation at your leisure that we could, share and discuss with the broader OCA community. Russ, I think, you probably have some ideas for, where that would fit too within our architecture roadmap. Assuming Russ is still there.
Yeah, that's right. We've worked with Oleg before. I remember working with him. I think he submitted the project through the OCA stick shifter. I think that we validated it, didn't we, Danny? So we've worked with Oleg before, and it's been great. He was one of our first use cases of a smaller company trying to use stick shifter. I don't know, Oleg, if you want to share any experiences. I know he shared a blog with us at one time too. I think he did one on OCA for us to tell us a little bit about what he's doing and some of his experience. So you can use that as reference as well.
Cool. I didn't recall that, of course, but that sounds cool.
It's been a little while, but it's good to see Oleg, you're still participating. So thanks for that.
Russ, do you want to maybe brief like Andrew and Danny and Oleg and Chris, you were on the PGB call a few weeks ago, but in terms of the architecture working groups, progress and some of the stuff that work streams that y'all have been pushing forward. I think that might be really interesting and possibly also pertinent to Professor Wolf's students.
Yeah, good point, Jory. So I'll be happy to. So the architecture group has been meeting now for, I don't know, about 6 or 7 months. And what we've been doing is trying to figure out how to define collaborative interoperation between security tools. For those of you that have been in the business, sounds like you all have, we experience in this business the fact that there's lots of independent actions going on. Although, security should be a team sport. Everybody should be working closer together. And one of the focuses we have at OCA is to figure out how to make that happen. How do we bring together a lot of different things and communicate? So the architecture group, and we do have a GitHub out there, and maybe Jory, you can put it in the chat where the GitHub is. But in the GitHub, it does talk about some of the draft work we've been doing. We have recorded and noted all of our meetings. We have some diagrams out there that's an initial understanding of how we pull stuff together. We're relying on a lot of NIST technology that they've done some work before. IACD's done some work before. The SCAP project's done some work before. So in the security industry, we've seen elements of things trying to integrate. And what we're trying to do is kind of bring that all together from end to end. So, where there is existing standards, we're working with those teams to bring it in, and then trying to pull it together so the composite, actually works together as a band rather than, independent sections of an orchestra. So that's the challenge. Well, it's really exciting. My experience myself has been for networking and systems. And I still remember in the days of early networking where we had problems like this. And I still remember the days of systems where we'd send out individual PCs, and it was hard to work with them one by one. We figured out how to work with them as groups. So same conceptual problem, but what we've been doing in the architecture group is trying to then get under that to get some specifically, how do we work it together? And as discussed before, OpenDXL ontology and stick shifter are two key components of what we're doing there.
So I'm looking at the GitHub right now, and I don't see something that looks like architecture. I see.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's under documentation.
Popped that link. I think maybe what he's looking for is the wiki, which is where you've been storing some more of the actual.
Yeah, that makes sense. Can you poke the link out there, Jory?
I did, yeah.
Thank you so much. But you'll see some extensive information out there. And right now, the team is working on, we have some use cases. The first one working on is a very obvious one, like malware detection. And what we're trying to do is figure out, how does that get discovered, and who needs to know about it? And what we find in general is there's a lot of things that need to know about it when something goes wrong. If somebody's accidentally been phished on an endpoint, you want to, obviously there's some software that's going to sit on the endpoint, figure that out. There's some work we want to do to isolate and mitigate the damage. There's some work we want to do to figure out what type of malware this is and what we should do about it. There's some work we should do in terms of now knowing we have this malware file, making sure that we've registered as an unknown file, and dealing with the appropriate process behind that to figure out how do we handle malware situations, and what should we do about this unknown file. And it can go all the way down to, defensively blocking firewall ports and searching out the IP addresses on the other side, and, all that kind of stuff. And if you look at security systems, the way customers run them, that's kind of what happens, but it's all these tools doing all these things independently that becomes the heartache of all this. And that is real hard as an administrator to deal with all these things consistently on a high volume basis. So, if you think about it through the use case I just described, if we can get that to orchestrate much better and have things inform quicker, obviously the system will be a lot more efficient than it is right now.
I'm just answering a question, or attempting to answer a question from Professor Wolf in the chat about the wiki. So the wiki that Russ maintains for our architecture working group is a combo of Markdown and HTML documents. You can go look and see the revision history, because it is a wiki, and in GitHub is also a Git repository, so you can see changes at different points in time. But we also upload like PDF docs and stuff like that, which you can't necessarily see the revision of, just that the file changed. But that's generally where Russ maintains all of the links to notes and video recordings and slide decks, that sort of thing that gets submitted. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, thanks, Jory. And I also added this weekend, you'll see on the top of the wiki, I actually pulled together all of the things we're working on, and we open issues in GitHub, which is a kind of a standard way of tracking things. If you look there, you see currently what we're struggling with and the kind of actions we're taking. So that gives you a feel for where we are right now. If you just look at that first link at the top of the wiki where it says to take a look at some of the issues that we've opened.
I wonder if, Chris, you would be interested in kind of talking a little bit to what kind of prompted and what excited TrueStar about getting involved. I think one of the things that we don't do as well as we should at the OCA is maybe describing sort of the bigger picture vision of, why we think OCA is, a great solution and a great sort of project to be collaboratively participating in. And I think maybe hearing from you and the team about, what prompted y'all to get involved would be really cool.
Sure. So our, TrueStar's primary product is, used by our customers to do data automation, right? So imagine, customers that are sending data from disparate systems into our platform, us taking data from, various threat intelligence feeds, various APIs and things like that, and trying to kind of normalize those, make sense of them, and then automate outcomes. You send some data in from an alarm, from a SIEM, and then we may, take that data, correlate it, and then try to score it to make a determination of what to do with it on the other end, right? Does it go in? Does it go back into your SIEM as an alarm? Does it go, into a case management system for an analyst to go look at, those types of things, or even just starting to think about pumping data straight into a SOAR and then starting to do actual, network modifications or other kind of, incident response or automated kind of workflows for those types of things. So, with all of that, standards are important, and understanding, how to take that data in and process it appropriately. And so one of the things that we're interested in is, could we, potentially adopt the sticks as, the stick standard in the OpenDXL ontology as our kind of data structures of record that we use internally? Would, selfishly starting to focus more on adapters for stick shifter give us, give us the ability to kind of scale up processing, data from more of these disparate systems and stuff like that. And, along with that would come, us starting to participate more in these open source initiatives and things like that. All make sense? Felt a little rambly, but.
No, I think it makes perfect sense. And I think it's, also speaks well to this sort of, I think, collaborative environment that OCA is striving to create between the open source implementation and sort of ideation process that's very collaborative, plus the standards development and sort of, kind of shared creation of a standard and shared adoption of a standard, and then how that sort of intersects with the businesses that come and support and like business need and the economic need of both of these things, which is super important and timely.
Yeah, and you kind of reminded me of, one of our big focuses, and I believe it's the same for IBM, is the concept of being able to share this intelligence, right? So a lot of this data ends up in silos and can't be utilized by, other companies, other organizations, other, industries. And a big part of this is, standardization is making it easier for people to take their internal intelligence and externalize it somehow so that it can be shared. We do a lot of work with ISAC organizations and ISALs, and it's important to be able to anonymize and then share some of this data, and that's a big part of what we're about.
And Chris, you're on a good point there. I mean, because I saw this in systems and networks as well. Because one of the things I've seen in the industry is our tools are getting more intelligent. They're becoming more analytical. A lot of things that have just recently happened are things like behavioral analysis and understanding where there are anomalies to make it cleaner and easier to get that understood. But what's coming up, which is even more exciting, is automation and advanced analytics. And you hear a lot about that today in the world of orchestration automation. And in order to get there, we do need to kind of progress the way we're communicating across each other so that it's not raw data we're trying to throw around to each other, reanalyze it over and over again and get somewhere, because that just is too hard and it's too complicated. So the maturity of the industry and the security itself is, we're getting a lot of great tooling, and then the intelligence is getting smarter like it used to in network and systems. But, we still got to get that ecosystem together to allow us to exchange it. And you were right on, talking about the silos of information, and, that is a problem, and the silos are there because it's necessary for the applications to do what they do. But on the other hand, there's a better way of doing it, and that's the collaborative approach. So, the industry as it matures is going to, continue to drive us to, get to a better way of communicating across those silos.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just think about the economics, right? Like if every entity has to build, some ETL or integration or whatever to get at all of this data, you have the same things being built over and over and over again, right? It just doesn't scale economically. And, standards and protocols are the way to solve some of that.
Right. So I just, point out that, you typically want sort of hub and spoke translation mechanism where you have and you built, you starting on a central ontology, which back in the 20th century, we used to call a data element dictionary. I just looking at it, I don't see I assume that the OpenDXL ontology project is the place where you would be putting that, right? And it hasn't seen a lot of action for a little bit. Am I looking in the right place?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The OpenDXL ontology is part of that. We just picked up a new project from NIST called the SCAP project, which the federal government's using. And basically, that started its use cases by getting configurations off of PCs and laptops and things, and bringing that centrally together, as you said, in the hub and spoke system, so that we can pull that data together. So we have elements. The OpenDXL has some definitions in it, but it's only the start. And as you see, some of our conversations in the groups we're having now at OCA is that's what we're starting to organize around. What data do we want to model? And it is basically brought down to actions and responses. So you're absolutely right. That's where it's going to go. And we've done some initialization on that, but that's the work yet to be done in the OCA. But that's the thing we're starting to focus on right now, as a matter of fact.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for explaining that. Yeah. So I'm gonna so I will be looking at that and try to get you some commentary on it. So, and obviously I'm talking like an old guy, but there are approaches that might be beneficial from the relational data modeling world that I could apply.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot. That's one of the tricky things. And some of the technology we use in today's modern world is, graphical databases, so we can pivot across different data entries that we know are duplicated across different viewpoints, I'll call it, of the security of space.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that, I look for is places where there are commonalities that I think can be leveraged. There's sort of a belief that that you can't use you can't have any rigidity in the schema that you use to describe things, because you always run into things that break the schema. And I understand that, but where we can leverage some of these well-proven things, I'd be happy to offer that as to provide some some beef to your data modeling, data storage.
Well, we certainly appreciate your help.
So now, do I need to be so I've cloned down a couple of these repos, and I'm just wondering if I need to be made a member or anything like that, and just do what I can when I can.
So that's a great question, and I think a good opportunity to describe a little bit about how the open projects and OCAs particularly, how it works. So like most open source projects, you don't actually have to be a member to make a contribution or to get involved. It's something that's very much open to the public. So we encourage a fork and pull request style workflow among would-be contributors if you had something that you wanted to add. And you don't have to, pay any membership dues. You don't have to, do anything of that sort. We have lots of open source style community spaces that you and your students can get involved in, again, without having to sign up or anything. We have a mail distribution list, we have Slack, and that sort of stuff. The membership in the OCA Github Org is really for the folks who are taking some more responsibility on and are going to help maintain part of the project in some way. And so we're going to grant them a little bit extra access. So that's kind of how we use that. And then also for folks who may belong to organizations that take it a step further and commit to signing our entity contributor license agreement to, commit themselves to the royalty-free patent policy that OASIS holds. So you don't have to, that's a nice thing about participating in this program compared to some others. You don't actually have to pay money and join up in that kind of old school standards development organization sense. You can get involved and make a difference without that. But of course, we can't do this without our wonderful sponsoring organizations like TrueStar and IBM Security, who through their support, we're able to provide a lot more resources and management for the community. and similar, I think, to a lot of open source projects. It's sort of like the do-ocracy, right? If you are showing up and making contributions and pull requests, it won't take very long before somebody says, oh, you know what, you're doing great work and this is awesome and you're clearly sticking around. So here, why don't we get you right access and, you know, or add you to a member of, to become a member of like the maintainers team, which would be great.
Thanks for the explanation.
Danny, I wonder if you want to talk a little bit about maintaining, because as you mentioned, you're the a maintainer on the Stick Shifter project. If kind of wonder if you want to talk a little bit about what y'all are working on and where Stick Shifter is heading.
Yeah, so I belong to a team with several members on that team are maintainers of the project. Our group, it's been a while since we've actually written connectors ourselves. So we typically will interface with other teams, both external and internal, who are developing new connectors. We do code reviews, look at pull requests, merge in the code, and then also for the purposes of CP4S, we end up, you know, creating images of those connectors and whatnot. Just to echo what you're saying, like I think it'd be great if we had more maintainers, you know, outside of IBM, who, you know, could look at pull requests and whatnot. Because one of the challenges we have is just not enough manpower. Actually, we'll often get PRs that come in that just maybe sit there a little too long, or issues don't get addressed as quickly as we would like. So that'd be great to have more support around that.
Do you have specific areas right now where like you would say, you know, review on this part of the code base or PRs on XYZ would be most welcome right now? You know, just to sort of give folks a sense of what would be.
So I would say to be a maintainer, a good start would be like if it was someone that had worked on a connector already, or had, you know, submitted PR, so they're obviously familiar with the code base, they're you know, familiar with creating a working connector. That would sort of be the, I guess, the prerequisite to have them as a maintainer of the project. And then also, like, what's really helpful is someone who's a subject matter expert on the data source that is being connected to. So that's, you know, we have knowledge gaps in our own team around that. You know, we're not experts in these data sources necessarily. So it's always like helpful, you know, if someone is familiar with the data source, because a lot of it comes down to like the mapping files, right? Mapping the sticks to the results and the queries, to just know what that mapping really should look like.
And then, you know, I think one thing that I can think about a lot is in my work is like, how does a person who is not yet the subject matter expert, like if you were listening to this call and maybe interested in building your first connector to learn and like really kind of understand and get involved, do you have any advice? Or, you know, I'm thinking also kind of to a certain extent of the students, right, who, for whom this might be a new way of thinking. What would you say to that group?
So yeah, definitely start by reading the documentation. It's all up there as part of the public GitHub, and it's just all linked off of the main README file. So there's a link to the overview of the project, and then at the bottom there's a link to the developer guide. So read through that, and then just look through any of the existing stick shifter modules. We have a couple of dummy modules that we use as templates that can be a good starting point. So just copying one of those over and modifying it to start building out a new connector. They're kind of based off of a SQL type of a query, which of course not every connector would use, but that's sort of where the starting point is for those anyway. But I mean, there's like all of the existing connectors are there to look through and dissect.
I also want to remind you, Jory, that Rose has posted a couple of nice videos on the OCA YouTube channel that introduces you to stick shifter, really short videos.
Oh yeah, that's a great point. We do have the YouTube channel where we're posting things and posting meetings also. So great reminder for that.
And there's also the OCA Slack channel. So there's a stick shifter channel as part of that organization. So when anyone has questions, they can post to that. We monitor it throughout the day.
On the topic of like, kind of thinking about getting involved and building plugins and things like that, and learning more about how all of these pieces connect together, I wonder if we want to talk about why that's an important, thing and activity for students and folks kind of coming up and learning about cybersecurity. I think there's a group of people on this call. Obviously, y'all are experts, but there's a new class of students and open source contributors and people who aren't as familiar with this space, and seeing like, how cybersecurity is evolving. And kind of understanding like why is it evolving in this direction, and why do we think this is the direction it should go? I think that's a pretty interesting topic, especially as I was saying for folks who are kind of newer to the space. I don't know if anybody wants to weigh in on that. Obviously, cybersecurity itself is a hot topic, and just, in public. Okay.
So I'd say to that, maybe just like, why it's important is because, these projects are based around open standards. So, I mean, it's as a student, it'd be great to, align yourself to that. And, personally, I think like Stix is a very good way of presenting that information. I'm not so familiar with the OpenDXL part, but like as far as stick shifter, like, being able to use a Stix pattern to query the data and then get the results back in this unified format it's pretty good, in my opinion anyway.
I think I also wonder, what it is that, would be helpful for people getting into this field to know. Is there are a lot of really excellent programmers out in the world, a lot of excellent programmers coming out of university or other types of learning environments, but the field of software development is quite vast, and you quickly get a sense that no one person knows all of it. So I think the question is, if you were a student really wanting to understand this space quite thoroughly, what would you recommend people study or start to get involved in? Are there other open source projects or other, community spaces that you think would be a good fit for those would-be security practitioners?
It's hard to say. There's so many projects out there, right? I mean, there's everything from standardizing automation and security with the Cacao project. There's things that NIST is doing. The government, federal government, is doing a lot of work in this area because guess what? Our nation state is under attack by others out there, and you hear it in the news all the time. So, one thing I suggest to students is to just grasp, get a hold of something that you think could be a good use case, and try and understand how the technology can help you with that and how you can feed into that technology, because there is so much of it. I suggest you try and focus on a piece of it. That's one way to go. The other way to go is to more look at the architectures, and as I said, NIST guys have done some work on that, as well as some of the other agencies. John Hopkins has a project going on as well, and they're looking more at the architecture. How do you approach security as a big picture, and then what are the key components of that? Just to understand the overall "quote unquote" security system and how it works is another way to go that students can understand. But I wouldn't go both ways. I'd pick one.
That's very helpful. I will definitely bring that to my students.
Okay, yeah, good. And if there's any more information you need on that specific NIST standards and things, I can certainly point you in that direction. It's hard not to overwhelm people with everything that's out there, because part of the job we're doing is sifting through all that good stuff to try and pull together some theme that meets our objectives, that uses those technologies in an orchestrated way. So, feel free to reach out to us, and I can give you some more specifics on particular areas that I know are fundamentals. I mean, there's a fundamental set from the SANS Institute, for example, of the top 20 things that security ought to be handling, and then there's other things like that are very prescriptive in the federal environment. And of course, I think you mentioned you worked on ISCAC, I think, and they do some very prescriptive stuff. So there's a number of different ways that's been approached, but they're examples, I think, of how to approach the problem, not the solutions by any chance of all of them.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge trying to help, trying to isolate productive productive places for students to explore and whatever, because there is such it's a colossal field of people doing things, and they're all doing things in vastly different ways. So one of the things that I'm using as a vehicle at Loyola is the NSA Centers for Academic Excellence. They've got some ways of looking at that, but that's just really an academic thing. That's how do you what are the topics you cover and how do you cover them? Getting from that to all of the actual work that's being done with developing tools and interoperability is so I appreciate your suggestions in that.
Professor,
Okay, yeah, excellent. Yeah, so to align what we're doing, the next step on something you're talking about there is as I mentioned, we just picked up the SCAP project from the NIST and federal government, and they were focused. All federal workstations are standardized to be able to plug into that architecture, so we can understand what's on each of those systems and enforce security policies against them. And so that may be an interesting next step, since that relates right up to what we're doing in OCA. Is part of our thing is to take the NIST work that we have that they finished with, and then rely it to what we're doing in OCA for the bigger picture. So that may be a nice little practicality there. And what the example you go through is taking a look at how do you secure, and they just did, I think they only restricted themselves to workstations. You can obviously extend that to IoT or mobile, And it would be a nice little exercise. You know, how would you apply that principle and architecture to those kind of environments? And they're different, but they also need to be managed.
I think it's probably worth just saying, just so no one's confused, the project that we have here at the OCA is a prototype implementation of SCAP v2, not the entire SCAP project. So I just have to be, we do want to be mindful that that's
yeah, good point. And they are continuing on to do those definitions, but the reason they came to us for the SCAP prototype was they've done the, as you said, the academics of it, and now they want to, you know, proof point with vendors that implement these things to try and prove it out and obviously improve the, you know, the theoretical part of that. So they do relate together, but you're absolutely right, Jerry. That continues on to define even more. You know, how do you manage the IT environment? They just got started on configuration and they just got started on workstation. So that's you have to select something, and that's what they picked to start with. But they will continue to work, you know, evolving that.
So we're nearing the top of our hour. I wonder if there's any parting questions or thoughts to conclude our first office hours, which regrettably we lost our hostess but hopefully her power comes back on. And same to you, Chris. I hope that that situation improves. Any parting questions or things we should, ideas, things we should dive and save into and save for later? Professor Wolf, if you would maybe drop your email address in the chat, and we can make sure to send links to like the Slack and some other things that we can send your way and perhaps get involved with some of your students. Thank you.
Yep, there it is. So, and I don't want to oversell myself. We are a small university, and you know, we only have 100 or so computer science students. So, you know, so it's not like one of these big departments or whatever. But I've got a lot of students who are interested in cybersecurity since we began the program, and so I'd love to try to find, you know, a couple of them that are juiced up enough to participate. So we'll see what happens.
Well, Loyola is a great school, and so I'll just say that I think I was really excited to hear you're from Loyola. And you know, the other thing that's exciting is that the program is emphasizing, you know, standards and, you know, standards development. That's something I always wonder about in school today. Like, to what extent do this programs really teach, you know, the importance of standardization and open source? And so it's just exciting. All right. Well, I just will say thank you, and thank you on behalf of Roseanne for coming to the first office hours. We'll get this posted up on YouTube so we can save it for later. And we'll look forward to seeing folks in a month. We're going to try this as a series, and hopefully your hostess with the mostess will be back in action for the next time. But thanks everyone for attending, and we'll see you at the next OCA event. I'm going to stop our recording.